In the quiet of a Sunday afternoon, a brilliant idea was born. "I shall create a DIY miniature realistic shop unicorn," you proclaimed, your eyes gleaming with the sparkle of 1,000 dreams. Little did you know, this journey would be filled with more twists and turns than a soap opera and more glue than an entire kindergarten class could handle. First came the hunt for supplies. Armed with a list that looked like Santa's naughty and nice list, you ventured into the craft store. The aisles were a maze of glitter, glue, and googler eyes. After a brief distraction in the aisle of unnecessary but incredibly cute stickers, you managed to gather your items. Miniature furniture, tiny pots of paint, delicate brushes, and a suspiciously large amount of glitter, because, let's face it, everything's better with glitter. With your supplies in hand, it was time to begin. You carefully laid out the tiny pieces of wood that would become the shop's walls. The instructions look simple enough, but they might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. Attach piece A to piece B using the provided adhesive. Simple, right? Except piece A had mysteriously vanished under the table, and piece B looked suspiciously like a leftover from a completely different set. Determined to conquer this miniature endeavor, you dropped to your knees and peered under the table. Amid the dust bunnies and forgotten crumbs, piece A lay tauntingly just out of reach. With the grace of a contortionist, you stretched and wriggled, finally managing to grab the elusive piece. Triumphantly, you returned to your workspace, only to realize that piece B had somehow disappeared in the interim. A frantic search ensued, with you overturning every item on the table, from paint pots to glue bottles. After what felt like an eternity, piece B reappeared, lodged between the pages of the instruction manual. With both pieces in hand, you took a deep breath and prepared to join them together. The instructions indicated the use of the provided adhesive, which came in a deceptively small tube. You squeezed it gently, but the adhesive had the consistency of thick molasses. It oozed out in slow motion, forming an uncooperative blob. You carefully dabbed the glue on piece A, aligning it with piece B, and pressed them together. Suddenly, piece A slid sideways, causing a smear of glue to spread across your fingers. You readjusted, holding your breath, but the pieces refused to stay in place. It was as if they had a mutual aversion. Frustration mounting, you applied a bit more glue, only to have it squirt out from the sides like toothpaste from an overpressed tube. Now, both pieces and your hands were thoroughly coated. You glanced at the instruction manual, seeking guidance. The tiny illustrations seemed to mock you with their simplicity. Hold pieces together for 30 seconds, it suggested. 30 seconds felt like an eternity as you pressed the pieces together, fingers trembling with the effort. Finally, the glue began to set, and you released your grip cautiously. The wall stood, albeit slightly crooked, with a charmingly imperfect alignment. You couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. This was no ordinary project. It was a test of patience, creativity, and sheer determination. With the first wall assembled, you felt a surge of accomplishment. Despite the initial chaos, you were making progress. Each tiny piece brought you one step closer to your whimsical vision. The journey had only just begun, and already it was filled with unexpected challenges and delightful mishaps. You set aside the newly assembled wall, taking a moment to wipe the glue from your hands and clear the clutter from your workspace. As you prepared to tackle the next set of instructions, you couldn't help but wonder what other adventures lay ahead in this miniature world you were creating. Ah, the glue. The supposed adhesive turned out to be the arch-nemesis of the entire project. As you squeezed the tube, a waterfall of glue gushed out, coating your hands, the table, and, unfortunately, your favorite pair of jeans. With hands sticking to everything like a human flytrap, you attempted to assemble the shop's walls. It was less like a construction project and more like a slapstick comedy routine. The initial squeeze had been cautious, but it quickly became clear that the tube had its own agenda. Glue spewed forth with a velocity that defied physics, transforming your workspace into a sticky disaster zone. Your fingers, now bonded together in a gluey handshake, struggled to grasp anything without adhering to it. In a desperate attempt to regain control, you grabbed a nearby napkin, but it only added to the mess. The napkin, now part of your glue-covered hand, flailed wildly as you tried to shake it off. Each movement seemed to exacerbate the situation, causing glue to splatter in new and unexpected places. The table, once a neat and organized work area, now looked like a battlefield, with glue splatters marking each skirmish. You glanced down at your jeans, now adorned with random patches of glue. These jeans had been your go-to comfort wear, and now they bore the scars of your crafting calamity. You sighed, knowing they were likely beyond salvation. Determined to push forward, you turned your attention back to the shop's walls. You attempted to pick up the tiny wooden pieces, but they clung to your fingers like needy children. With each piece you managed to lift, another seemed to stick somewhere else. At one point, you had a piece stuck to your elbow, another dangling from your forearm, and a third precariously perched on your shoulder. Undeterred by this comedic predicament, you soldiered on. You managed to align the pieces of the shop's walls, but they slid apart as if mocking your efforts. The glue, which should have been a helpful ally, had become a mischievous foe. You pressed the pieces together, but they squirmed and shifted under your sticky fingers. In a moment of ingenuity, you decided to use household items as makeshift clamps. You reached for a pair of tongs, only to realize they too were now glued to the table. The absurdity of the situation struck you, and you couldn't help but laugh. Here you were, a determined crafter turned accidental comedian, battling road glue with kitchen utensils. Your laughter was interrupted by the sound of your cat entering the room. The feline, curious and blissfully unaware of the chaos, approached your glue-covered jeans. You quickly shooed the cat away, imagining the disaster if it got glued to you. The cat, sensing the madness, wisely retreated to a safe distance to observe the spectacle. After what felt like an eternity, you managed to stabilize the shop's walls using a combination of creative problem-solving and sheer stubbornness. The walls, though slightly crooked, stood firm. Your hands, however, were a different story. They were now a sticky testament to your crafting ordeal. You took a moment to survey the scene. The table was a mess, your jeans were ruined, and your hands were still semi-glued together. Yet, amidst the chaos, you felt a sense of accomplishment. You had faced the great glue debacle head-on and emerged victorious, if a bit sticky. As you cleaned up the aftermath, peeling glue from your fingers and trying to salvage what you couldn't help but smile. This project, with all its unexpected challenges and comedic moments, was turning out to be an adventure. And you were ready for whatever came next, armed with glue, determination, and a good sense of humor. Finally, the walls were standing, albeit a bit crookedly. It was time to add the piece de resistance, the unicorn. This tiny, majestic creature would be the heart of the shop. As you painted the unicorn with delicate strokes, it somehow ended up looking more like a tie-dyed llama. You laughed until tears streamed down your face, embracing the absurdity of your creation. Next came the interior decoration. You painstakingly placed miniature shelves, tiny books, and even tinier knickknacks. Each piece had a mind of its own, toppling over at the slightest touch. The miniature cash register, which was supposed to sit proudly on the counter, repeatedly fell to the floor, sending tiny coins scattering like confetti. You decided the shop needed some ambience, so you attempted to install tiny LED lights. This proved to be a task requiring the dexterity of a brain surgeon and the patience of a saint. After hours of fiddling, you managed to get the lights working, only to realize they were flickering like a haunted house. Your shop now had a spooky, yet oddly charming, atmosphere. The LED lights, packaged in a deceptively simple-looking box, promised to bring a warm glow to your miniature unicorn shop. You envisioned a cozy, inviting atmosphere where tiny customers would bask in the gentle light. Little did you know, these tiny lights were the ultimate test of your fine motor skills and sanity. You began by unwinding the delicate strands of lights, each one seemingly designed to tangle at the slightest provocation. As you separated the wires, they coiled around your fingers, mocking your attempts at organization. The instructions, printed in a font so small you needed a magnifying glass to read them, added to the challenge. Step 1. Insert batteries. This sounded straightforward, but the battery compartment was no larger than a thimble. You fumbled with the tiny batteries, dropping them multiple times before finally securing them in place. A small victory, but the real challenge was yet to come. Step 2. Attach lights to the interior walls. This simple directive turned into a meticulous operation. The lights were minuscule, and the wires even smaller. Your hands, still recovering from the glue debacle, struggled to maneuver the tiny components. You felt like a giant trying to perform surgery with toothpicks. You opted to use tweezers, hoping for better precision. This helped, but the process was still painstakingly slow. Each light needed to be positioned just right, and the wires tucked neatly along the edges. The adhesive backing on the lights was weak, requiring you to hold each one in place for what felt like an eternity until it adhered. As the hours passed, you became acutely aware of the strain on your eyes and the cramp in your neck. You shifted positions, trying to find a more comfortable angle, but the lights continued to test your patience. Every time you thought you had a light secured, it would slip or flicker, prompting a string of muttered curses. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last light was in place. You stepped back, admiring your handiwork. It was time for the moment of truth, turning on the lights. You held your breath and flipped the tiny switch. The shop was instantly bathed in a soft glow, and for a brief moment, you felt a surge of triumph. Then, the flickering began. One by one, the lights started to blink erratically, casting eerie shadows across the miniature shop. What was supposed to be a cozy ambience now resembled a scene from a haunted house. The flickering lights created a strobe effect, making the tiny furniture and unicorn posters look like they were part of a ghostly apparition. You couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Your carefully crafted shop now had a spooky, yet oddly charming, atmosphere. It was as if the unicorns had decided to throw a Halloween party in the middle of summer. Despite the unintended result, there was something endearing about the flickering lights. They added character to the shop, giving it a quirky, unpredictable vibe. Accepting the shop's new haunted house aesthetic, you decided to embrace the imperfections. After all, this project was as much about the journey as it was about the final product. The flickering lights became a conversation piece, a humorous anecdote in the story of your DIY adventure. As you cleaned up the remnants of your lighting fiasco, you couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Despite the challenges and unexpected outcomes, you were creating something unique and personal. The flickering lights were a testament to your perseverance and creativity, a reminder that sometimes the best moments come from the most unexpected places. No unicorn shop would be complete without a touch of sparkle. You opened the glitter, intending to sprinkle a little magic around. However, the lid had other ideas and promptly exploded, covering you, the shop, and your entire workspace in a glittery apocalypse. Everything, including your cat who innocently wandered in, now shimmered like a disco ball. The glitter, housed in a seemingly innocent plastic container, promised to add that final magical touch to your creation. You carefully twisted the lid, prepared to gently shake out a modest amount. Instead, the lid popped off with the force of a champagne cork, sending a torrent of glitter into the air. Time seemed to slow as the shimmering particles erupted like a volcano, cascading over everything in their path. Your immediate reaction was to shield your eyes, but it was too late. Glitter rained down on your hair, face, and clothes, turning you into a sparkling spectacle. You sputtered and tried to brush the glitter away, but it clung stubbornly, embedding itself in every fiber of your clothing and every strand of your hair. The shop, which had just begun to look charmingly spooky with its flickering lights, was now transformed into a glittering wonderland. The tiny shelves, miniature furniture, and even the unicorn figurines were coated in a thick layer of sparkle. It was as if a fairy had waved a wand and decided that everything needed to shine. Your workspace, once organized chaos, was now a dazzling disaster zone. The glitter had spread far and wide, settling into every nook and cranny. Your crafting tools, paint bottles, and even the instruction manual were not spared. It was a scene of pure, unadulterated glitter mayhem. In the midst of this sparkling catastrophe, your cat sauntered in, curious about the commotion. The feline, unaware of the glitter explosion, sniffed around the edges of the workspace. In a matter of seconds, the cat too was enveloped in a cloud of glitter. The sight of your now disco ball-like cat was the final straw. You burst into uncontrollable laughter, the absurdity of the situation overwhelming any frustration. Your cat, now shimmering in the sunlight, looked both confused and slightly regal. It meowed plaintively, pawing at its new sparkly coat. You tried to comfort the poor creature, but every touch only transferred more glitter onto your already bedazzled hands. The two of you were now partners in this glittery misadventure. Realizing the futility of trying to contain the mess, you decided to embrace the chaos. You picked up the container, still half full of glitter, and continued to sprinkle it around with reckless abandon. If everything was already covered, a little more wouldn't hurt. The shop, now sparkling under the flickering lights, looked like a scene from a whimsical dream. With glitter in your hair, on your clothes, and even in your shoes, you stood back to admire your handiwork. The unicorn shop, with its imperfect walls, haunted lights, and now glitter-coated decor, was a testament to your journey. It was a masterpiece of unintended consequences and creative resilience. As you began the daunting task of cleaning up, you knew the glitter would linger for weeks, perhaps even months. It would be a constant reminder of this chaotic, hilarious, and ultimately delightful chapter in your DIY adventure. The glitter explosion, though messy and unexpected, had added a unique charm to your project. In the end, your shop wasn't just a miniature replica. It was a reflection of your creativity, perseverance, and ability to find joy in the messiest of situations. And as your cat, still sparkling, curled up in a corner, you couldn't help but smile. This glittery journey had turned out to be more magical than you could have ever imagined. After what felt like an eternity, the shop was finally coming together. You added the finishing touches, a tiny, open sign, miniature unicorn posters, and the world's smallest potted plant. You stepped back to admire your handiwork. It wasn't perfect, but it was yours, and it was glorious in its own quirky way. With a sense of accomplishment, and a lot of glitter still stuck to your hair, you unveiled your DIY miniature realistic shop unicorn to friends and family. They marveled at the tiny details, laughed at the stories of your misadventures, and praised your persistence. Your shop wasn't just a miniature masterpiece. It was a testament to your creativity, resilience, an ability to find humor in every glue-covered mishap. As you cleaned up the last remnants of glitter and glue, you reflected on your journey. It had been a roller coaster of emotions, from frustration to laughter, from moments of doubt to bursts of creativity. In the end, your DIY project had become much more than a miniature shop. It was a reminder that the process, with all its ups and downs, was just as magical as the final product. And so, the little shop stood proudly on your shelf, a symbol of your whimsical adventure and a constant reminder that sometimes the most delightful creations come from the most unexpected and hilariously sticky moments.